I remember when I was building my very first camper van electrical system, and I was just overwhelmed. I felt like there was just way too many places to learn information from. I was never sure if those information sources were accurate, and I just felt like my brain was melting.
What is the boiling point of brain?
So my goal here with this video today is kind of to create a resource that I would have appreciated having 4 years ago when I was building my first system. So today we're going to start by calculating exactly how many amp hours I will need on an average day, and then we're going to answer the next big question, which is, how do you even choose a system and how do you install all of that? This video is brought to you by REDARC and the highly anticipated launch of the REDARC Alpha Manager 100. It's the simplest battery management system on the market that can charge your batteries at 100 amps from a number of power sources and helps consolidate and simplify the process of planning an electrical system by being an all-in-one system while also making efficient use of space so you can save more room in your rig or camper for the things that you love. All right, so let's jump right into this. And the first thing I need to do is calculate my electrical needs. How much power will I even need? This is going to help me decide what size inverter I want to get, how many solar panels and batteries I need, etc., etc. And I'll use this information later to figure out wire sizes and more. But overall, this is just a really good place to start. So I actually started by looking at the sketches that I made of what I want my finished van to look like. Having a good idea of your layout from the very beginning is really important because so much is determined by this. It's going to help you know what appliances you will have, where they'll be located, and those specific things are really important to us right now. So the first thing I did was make a giant list of every electrical device I'll be powering in my van. And another word for that is to call them my loads. And loads is just another word for devices that'll pull power. So now we're just going to split that list into AC loads and DC loads. And you don't need to know this next part, so if it goes in one ear and out the other, that's totally fine. But if it helps you understand that we're not talking about rock bands, then that may be helpful. AC stands for alternating current, and in AC, electrons flow in both directions. On the other hand, DC is not just a knockoff of Marvel, it is also standing for direct current in our case. And in DC, electrons move in one direction. It flows from the positive end to the appliance to the negative end, etc., etc. We won't get too far into that today. But electricity produced by things like solar panels and batteries produce DC electricity. So if we want to power our AC devices, we're going to have to convert that DC power to AC power. And we'll be doing that later on with the use of an inverter. But more importantly, for right now, we need to separate that list of loads that we just made by AC and DC power loads. Basically, what I'm going to do is take this list I have here and then divide this further to be able to actually organize and use it a little better. So we're going to split our list into a few parts, but we're going to start simple with the AC loads. So I'm just going to start a whole new list and call it Table 1, where I'll move all of my items that are AC loads. So for example, for me, one of those would be my NutriBullet. For AC loads, in order to figure out what an AC load is, you can just think of three-pronged devices you would plug into a household outlet. However, this is actually going to get a little tricky. Moving on to our next list is Table 2, and this is where it's going to get confusing because these may be what you originally thought would be in Table 1 as AC loads. So I have only one item that fits under this category, and this is my e-bike charger. So this is my e-bike charger, and this is the cord. And as you can see in the middle, it has this giant brick. Any device that has a big brick like this in the middle of the charging cord is going to go into Table 2. This is still going to be a 110 volt appliance, aka a AC appliance, but it has this AC DC adapter already in the middle of the cord, so we're going to account for that and put it into Table 2. Next is Table 3, and we are then going to list our DC appliances or 12 volt appliances. I want to note there are some devices you may buy that will have a three-pronged wall outlet with them, but you can actually cut and splice and turn that into a DC load. So for example, my LED light strips come with a wall outlet plug, but I've always just cut that off, spliced open the wires, and put that into my fuse box regardless. Just do some research and figure out which of your devices you can turn into those DC outlets and which one are going to be still AC. Another example is actually my CCTV cameras that I recently installed. Right now they are on a car charger, but I can actually also cut that off, have that come open, and it will have a red and black wire, and I can splice, and put that into my DC appliances. The first thing on my list of DC loads is my puck lights, which will be my main source of light in the van during the day. These are the puck lights I used in my last van and I'll be using again. The lights you end up choosing, you want to be LEDs of some kind because they have lower power consumption and longer lifespan. My next load is my LED lighting or tube lighting. I'll also be installing CCTV security cameras and blink cameras, my Max Air fan, my Orion roof rack also came with exterior lights, so I'll probably be installing those as well. And finally, my Van Life Tech heated floors, I believe, will go in there. I want to research that a bit more. Something else on this list that I don't have in here yet is my 3 USB outlet chargers, but we're not actually going to be adding those to this current list because they're not devices. The battery's not charging those, but instead whatever is plugged into it. Moving on to table 4, now we're going to make a separate list of things that you plug in to charge. So my phone, my USB fan, my camera, my Kindle, my Insta360, drones, portable battery chargers, anything like that. And finally is table 5, which is any device that is on all day. And my only load for this personally is my Dometic refrigerator. However, another good example would be if you have an internet extender like Starlink or WeBoost. And also, I just want to include a few examples of loads that I will not be personally having in my camper van, but maybe will help you make your list. I know sometimes you feel like you're forgetting something, so I just wanted to kind of throw more things out there. A SureFlow water pump, a water heater, a shower, a toilet, internet, induction cooktop, a Webasto heater, a bath bomb. Depending on what kind of day you're having, you know, sometimes you make toast, sometimes you become toast. Sometimes toast becomes you. I don't know. But once that is done, where should we list all of these? How do we organize them? There are 1,000,005 different charts and things online, and I know it can be overwhelming, but the best one I have found, hands down, really good for beginners, no fluff, easy to use, was this power audit by explorist.life. So I'll link this in the description below if you're trying to learn camper van electrical of any kind. Their site, super easy. I love it. It's helped a lot. Not sponsored, you know, or anything. I just really have used them a lot, and I really like how simplistic it is, and I feel like they know that. And so his power audit is what we're going to be using today, and because it's going to do all of the math for us and all the calculations, and it's super organized, and I'm in love with that. So now we're just going to click this link, and it will take us to this handy dandy power audit. We can make a copy, and he actually made it so it has an example audit in it for you already. That way you can see how it's done. And that's super helpful, but you can actually just erase all of those answers and put yours in. So we're going to take those 5 lists we just made and insert the names of each item into the first column. So table 1 we made goes into table 1.1, table 2, table 1.2, table 3, table 1.3, table 4, 1.4, table 5, 1.5. You get it. Once that is done, we are on to part 2. Now we are going to find volts, amps, and wattage for each of those devices by looking either in the operation manual, Google searching it, or oftentimes I just looked on Amazon on the listing from where I bought it, and it's sometimes listed there. It can be confusing. On Amazon though, I've had a device say like 3 different numbers for voltage for my CCTV cameras, and it was very confusing. So take Amazon listings with a grain of salt. You know. So what you're looking for in the manual is actually not for to tell you amp hours. What you're going to be looking for is amps, watts, or voltage, and you don't actually need all 3 for this task. What value you need depends on which table the device is in. So for table 1 and 3 for your AC and DC appliances, we just need to find the watts. And most of my devices were bought from Amazon, so it was a pretty simple thing to just go to my order history, click the device, and scroll down, or do a Google search. Or for my Van Life Tech heated floors, I actually used their website to find the digital version of the product manual, then found the wattage at steady state. Or if you're struggling, absolutely call those companies up. They are there to help you, and they're usually very nice about it. So that's always an option. If you can't find the wattage for one of the devices, but you can find the voltage and the amperage, you can actually multiply the volts and amperage to get the wattage or vice versa. I'll put all of the equations on the screen, but this power audit by Explorus Life also has a calculator on table 3 you can use, or you can just Google amps to watts calculator, and that's usually what I do. For table 3, you just need to put how many of each device you plan on having. So if you'll have 10 puck lights, that 3 watts is actually per each circular light, not for the whole pack. And if you have 2 max air fans, you'll want to mark that as well. Table 2 was for the devices with an adapter, so we need output volts and output amps, which was actually the easiest one because it tends to be written pretty big on the back of the power block on the wire. Table 4 is for single charge items, so you just need to know the size of the battery or how much power overall the system uses, which is watts, and how many hours it takes to complete one full charge. So what you're looking for is watt hours. And if you Google, for example, how many watt hours does an iPhone 11 Pro Max have, you should be able to find an answer. And if you can't, you may be able to find enough numbers to use to calculate watt hours. If the device offers battery size and amp hours instead, you can actually use table 1.4b, which I had to do for my rechargeable AA battery device. And finally, table 5 was pretty tricky for me. These are your devices that run all day. So if you know your amps and how many hours you'll be running it a day, you can actually just multiply those numbers, but odds are the device isn't running fully consistently every second of the day. So you'll need to research what the average daily amps pulled from those devices are in a steady state. So for example, once your fridge reaches that, good temperature, it shouldn't need to continuously run it. It should be able to just, words. You get it. Now, the last thing to do is go back and insert your guesstimate of how many minutes a day you'll be using each device. My blender was only 2 minutes, but my air conditioner was 5 hours. For something like my e-bike battery, though, I only need to charge this once every 2 weeks. So even though it takes 10 hours for it to charge from 0% to 100%, I put 30 minutes because I'm not going to be charging it every day or that often, and so I just kind of wanted the average of if I was to charge it, because sometimes you just don't use all these devices all that often. For my exterior lights, I use them really rarely, so I put a 0. My Kindle can stay charged for weeks, so I put that for a 0 as well, but my phone I charge like 4 times a day, so no doubt, no hesitation, I just went all out on that one. At this point, your computer will have magically calculated your expected average amp hours for your just daily use. And from that, it will calculate your expected component sizes that you're going to need. Again, a million thanks to Explorus Life for making this beautiful, magical graph. He also sells like full electrical kits and has free wiring diagrams. So if you liked this, check out his website. He has just a lot of really great resources. All right. Let us see my numbers, shall we? It is recommended that I get 400 amp hours of lithium batteries or 800 amp hours of AGM batteries, but lithium are extremely easily the better option, so I'll be sticking with that, and I'll go over that later. They are recommending for me 800 watts of solar panels and a 2,000 watt inverter. The first thing I want to say is if these numbers are wildly out of your budget, that is fine. You can always go backwards and see if you can, decide to use something less or make a plan to be able to, maybe I could charge my bike battery while I'm showering at the gym or something like that. So you can always work backwards or just kind of figuring it out, but knowing your expectations and what you have is really important so that you can know that you're probably going to want to charge your bike battery at the gym. So if you don't have the money right now for those batteries, you can always just save space to be able to expand later on. So this graph recommended that I get 400 amp hours, which again is very high, but that is because of my very exciting, very exhilarating Cruise and Comfort Icebox air conditioner. And I will have a tiny little baby in my van with me this time, and I'm so excited for her to be in the van. But with that, I knew I wanted to have a reliable big air conditioner, and that's what I have, but that's going to pull power. There is definitely a cost to that. So I have two 206 amp hour SOK batteries. So I do actually hit that 400 amp hours they suggest. And that is thanks to a really great company called Sandy Vans who installed my system for me and recommended, and we had a full conversation about what I wanted to do outside of this graph as well, which was very helpful. Also, when it comes to saving money on a system, a lot of people will choose to go for AGM batteries over lithium batteries because they're cheaper. However, lithium are just better. Lithium have more charge cycles, meaning they're going to last 4 to 6 times longer. And I actually saw a study where it showed that if you buy AGM batteries, you're going to have to replace them about 10 times before your lithium battery starts reaching the end of its life cycles. Also, with an AGM battery, you can only use half of the marketed amp hours in order to be discharging it in a healthy rate. So you can actually only use 50% of that battery in order to avoid damaging the unit. So let's say you get 100 amp hours of usable energy from an AGM battery. You would need to buy 2 of those in order to equal what you would get from a lithium battery. And actually, I hadn't even thought of it, but I don't know size-wise, are you also taking up double the amount of space in your van? So you're probably wondering, why am I even explaining when obviously there's a very clear option? And it's because lithium batteries are much more expensive. Let's say I use 100 amp hours a day. Then 2 AGM batteries only being discharged no more than 50% would last a little over a year until you need to spend another 400 to buy more AGM batteries. But the lithium will last you at 100 amp hours a day, 13 and a half years. So do you see why I would say, I get why you're budgeting up front, but it's going to cost you in just a year to have to get more. So yeah, actually, I think budgeting actually is going with the lithium batteries because you're saving money in the long run and saving yourself time and energy of having to replace those batteries, etc. You're also not having to worry about, am I getting past my 50% discharge rate and worrying about those kind of things. So yeah, that's kind of why I think it sounds like you're budgeting by going for AGM, but maybe you're actually not. I'd recommend looking into seeing if you can buy batteries from a company that offers something like a firm or those, pay back per month kind of systems. That way you aren't spending money on a battery that's you're just gonna have to replace or will die or be wasted money. I find that everyone is saying Battleborn is overpriced these days. I went with SOK batteries, but if anyone has a favorite battery brand or bad battery brand stories, I'd love to hear them in the comments. All right, so the next thing we need to do is decide what kind of electrical system we want. The first option is just using a power station. And I've done that for years. The last 7 months living in Vegas, I lived completely on a power station. And before that, in my very first van I lived in for 3 years, I lived completely off of a Goal Zero 3000X. So not only is it completely doable, I think, if anything, people say it as if it's like a bad thing, but for me, I was really overwhelmed with researching how to set up a system, so I went with the Goal Zero 3000X for my first van. I bought a complete wiring kit from Freedom Van Go, and yeah, it was pricey because I'm paying for their labor and their knowledge, but it took me no time to set up. It was great. It was super easy. I always knew if anything happened, there was just like one blinking red reset button. That's all I had to press and everything was fixed. I do wish it would have worked in colder weather. I do wish I could have expanded it over time. At the time, Goal Zero did not have an expandable battery pack, but besides that, honestly, it works. I know not everyone loves it, but it works. Kind of settled on having a power station system in my last van because I was just overwhelmed with electrical videos and knowledge and I just couldn't figure it out. And it was a really simple solution and I was really happy with it. So why am I not doing that this time? My air conditioner and my heater actually will not work with a power station. We actually tried with my Van Life Tech floor to plug it into my Anker C1000 and the boiler startup, it just needed more power than I could get from that Anker. And Cruise and Comfort, I asked them and they were like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna happen. So that is why I upgraded this time to a quote unquote real fancy electrical system. I didn't want to have to compromise and not have a great heating system and a great air conditioning because of my electrical system. So this time around, my electrical is super fancy, and that's so that it could handle these super fancy systems. Or another option you could do is this super overly complicated puzzle piece kind of system. I like to call these Pinterest boards because they just feel like they're aesthetics, but then they take up so much space in a van. These Victron systems and other brands, they're just made up of so much stuff. And people take up like an entire bench seat trying to organize these, or like a whole back wall of their van. And I'm not a huge fan of that. Like I have things I want to put in my van. I need a full closet. You know, I've got a cat now. There's 2 of us in there. She needs space too. So I didn't want this huge Pinterest board electrical system. The inverter/charger alone is 20 by 9.3 by 5.8 inches. Just the inverter/charger piece. So one piece. My entire REDARC system that I decided to go with, the entire system is in this Sandy Vans rigged up kit, and the very handy dandy box they sell is 17.5 by 18.5 by 18.5. It's incredible. It takes up so little space, and that's what I want, because end of the day, obviously, your power system is one of the most important things you're gonna put in your van. But when it comes to like things you wanna see or things you want to take up space, that's the least important thing I want to take up space. You know, I want bikes in there. I want my kayak in there. I want my cat to have a whole castle in there, you know? So that was really important to me, that I did not just overload and take up so much space in my van.
And by the way, I am not special. This REDARC kit is available just right on the Sandy Vans website. It's not DIY, besides the fact that you still need to connect your devices and charging yourself. So you get this whole box as is at pickup at their shop. They even have a full, well put together video of how they do it step by step on their website. If that price freaks you out, let me just say I spent $5,000 on my Goal Zero and pre-wired kit in 2020, and that was just a power station. And this Victron kit from Explorus.life, I do love them, but this is still a fully DIY kit, and you will spend hours putting this together, and it will take up more space, and it's $8,307, so $1,750 less with the REDARC kit, and you don't do most of the install. Honestly, just time is money, opportunity cost, you get it.
I really want to show you what this system looks like in real life while we talk about it, so let's head outside. So that is my entire electrical system. 2 SOK batteries, the inverter, the manager alphas on the other side. We've got the TVMS on top, even including the screen right here, which will have all of my controls to be able to turn on my lights, all of my different loads. So that is literally my entire system. As you can see here, this is my air conditioner, and this is my air conditioner. My air conditioner is bigger than my electrical system. And this is my heating system, which goes from here to here, is also bigger than my entire electrical system, which, as you can tell, probably because of how big these 2 systems are, it's really awesome to me how small and compact this is. And the reason this works with the REDARC system is because they have the Manager Alpha 30 and 100, which is an all-in-one system, which takes all of those little pieces and puts it all into one device. So minimizing the space you'll need to take up while maximizing the capacity and ability of your system, which is great for a lot of reasons, but also because this is going to minimize the amount of wiring you have to do, the amount of pieces you need to understand. It's going to be a less complex install, less wires all throughout going everywhere, confusing you, and it just felt very streamlined. And the Manager Alpha is the simplest battery management system on the market. The Manager Alpha is also what makes this an all-in-one system. It's a DC to DC charger, a battery isolator, a 240 volt charger, a load disconnect controller, a battery monitor, a MPPT solar regulator, fuses, has a connection for shore power charging, which means yes, this will provide a way to charge from all 3 different sources: your alternator, solar, and AC or a shore plug. It is essentially pretty much everything you need but the inverter. It has a DC to DC charger, which means that it will charge your auxiliary batteries while you are driving, which is often called alternator charging. And it also has a battery isolator, so it will never pull too much power from your car's battery. A really unique feature of the Manager Alpha 100 is that it will prioritize green energy first. So it will actually try to top off your batteries from the solar panels first. And also, it actually has the ability to send back charge into your car's battery when this is at 100%, which means that it can keep your car's battery topped off as well. And actually, it also works as a car starter. My car battery died, and I actually was able to use this to get my car back up and running in under 15 minutes. But yeah, so then we're moving on to the install of the system. And there are a lot of videos on how to install the Manager Alpha 30. There's a 30 and a 100, I believe, and they also come with the manual on how to install them. I will also include, REDARC sent me a whole wiring diagram for my system and how my system is hooked up, and I will include that in the description as well if you want to see that. I think hopefully that will just help people who are a little bit confused on how all of the wiring works, see how it works. Like a visual always is helpful. You can also always contact their customer service. That's what I did a few different times, asking questions about how things work and how to wire things. They've been super helpful. I do have a full install video that I did with Sandy Vans and Steven Stolp that he installed the full system for me, and I'll link that. But yeah, to consolidate, so this last step is picking out the components that I need for my system, if you haven't caught on to that yet. And this was much easier for me because REDARC consolidated everything into just a few pieces. So I just needed to pick 2 devices. The inverter, which the power audit that we did together told me I needed a 2000 watt inverter, and the Manager Alpha 100, which I chose the 100 over the other options just because of how fast it recharges my system when I drive and from other sources. And yeah, that's it. That's, I have the TVMS and the screen and the battery monitor. That's simple, and that is why I chose REDARC. I like simple. It gets overwhelming when it comes to electrical systems. And so now that I've discovered the size of the system that I need, picked out my devices for that system, now we have to move on to the install, which will be a whole separate video, and it's going to be really great. I have Steven Stolp from Sandy Vans installing the whole thing. I'm very excited to share the install that he did for me of the REDARC system. So I will see you in part 2 and 3 and 4. If I live that long.